My name is Lisa Klein, 33 years old, investigative journalist at the Valley Tribune. March 8th, 2026. My mother stood up at my sister's promotion dinner, raised her glass in front of 29 people, and smiled like she was delivering good news. One daughter married a cardiothoracic surgeon who saves hearts every day, she announced. The other brought home a baker who smells like flour. Guess which one actually makes me proud? The room exploded with laughter. I stared at my plate. Wesley squeezed my hand under the table. He didn't say a word. They didn't know I'd spent 5 years exposing people who destroy lives. They didn't know I'd been quietly documenting my own family's cruelty for 3 months. And they definitely didn't know what my grandmother was sliding across the white tablecloth. A newspaper folded open to page 14. That single toast wasn't just humiliating. It was the biggest mistake my mother would ever make. Before I tell you what happened next, if this story already hits close to home, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been publicly humiliated by your own family? Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? My name is Lisa Klein, and this is the night everything changed. I've been at the Tribune since 2021. 5 years of digging through records, following paper trails, asking questions people didn't want to answer. Before that, I did PR work for 3 years after college, hated every minute of it. All that spin, all that careful messaging designed to hide truth rather than reveal it. I quit in 2018, freelanced for a while, finally found my way to journalism. Found my way to what I was supposed to be doing all along. My editor, Anne Brennan, once told me I had good instincts, that I knew when to dig and when to let go. What she didn't know was I'd never actually learned the second part. When something didn't make sense, when the official story had holes, when people in power were too comfortable, I dug. I kept digging until I found bedrock or hit bone. 12 published investigations in 5 years. County budget fraud that led to an FBI case. Nursing home neglect that shut down 3 facilities. A school board member funneling construction contracts to his brother-in-law. Stories that created real consequences, not just clicks. That was the work that mattered. That was the work that let me sleep at night. The corkboard above my desk was covered with clippings, my bylines, red marker outlining what happened after each story published. Official fired, policy changed, $2.3 million returned to the county. Evidence that journalism could still do what it was supposed to do, hold power accountable. But the story I'd been circling for 3 months wasn't on that board. That one lived in a password-protected folder on my laptop, labeled simply, medical. Wesley Grant owned Grant's Table, a bakery in the Riverside District, 22 blocks west of St. Augustine Medical Center. Not that I'd thought much about that distance at the time. He specialized in European-style breads, sourdough, rye, olive ciabatta, things that took time and patience and skill. But that wasn't what made his bakery different. Grant's Table only hired people with felony records, formerly incarcerated individuals who couldn't find work anywhere else, people the system had labeled unemployable. Wesley gave them a chance. More than a chance. He gave them training, living wages, respect. People deserve a second chance to write their story, he told me when I first interviewed him back in October 2020. I'd come to do a piece on small businesses adapting during COVID. Everyone has a past. Not everyone gets a future. I'm trying to change that ratio. I'd been coming to the bakery ever since. First for the story, then for the coffee, then for him. 6 years now. We shared a small apartment 3 blocks from Grant's Table, his 4 a.m. alarm for bakery prep. My late nights fact-checking sources, his cookbooks next to my case files, his sourdough starter in the fridge labeled Herman Do Not Touch. My coffee mug with Watergate's greatest hits printed on the side. On our third date, he'd asked, "Does your family know you're seeing someone?" I'd shrugged. "They don't really ask about my life." He'd nodded like that made perfect sense. Then, carefully, "What does your sister do for work?" "Cardiothoracic surgeon at St. Augustine Medical Center." Something had crossed his face, gone in a second. "That's impressive," he'd said, voice perfectly flat. I'd been trained to notice micro-expressions, trained to catch the lie beneath the truth. But I didn't ask. I let it go. Another regret for the collection. My family worked like this. There was Penelope, and then there was everyone else. Penelope Klein Ashford, 39 years old, 6 years older than me, which meant she'd always been 6 years ahead in everything. 6 years closer to what our mother wanted. 6 years more embedded in the hierarchy she'd built. Penelope went to college while I was still in middle school. Graduated med school when I was applying to journalism programs. Finished her cardiothoracic fellowship while I was working in PR and hating my life. By the time I'd figured out what I wanted to do, she'd already become what she was supposed to be. Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at St. Augustine Medical Center. Youngest in the hospital's 87-year history. Published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Married to Dr. Jonathan Ashford, an orthopedic surgeon at Memorial Hospital. 2 professionals, 2 incomes, 2 people who saved lives for a living. My mother, Diane Klein, was a partner at Brennan and Associates, an environmental law firm, 61 years old. Sharp, successful, competitive. She'd built a career on winning arguments, and she'd built a family the same way. Someone always had to be winning, which meant someone always had to be losing. At family functions, the introductions went like this. "This is my daughter Penelope, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery, and her husband Dr. Jonathan Ashford, orthopedic surgeon." Pause, turn. "And this is Lisa. She writes for the local paper." The pause before my name. Half a second, but enough to communicate everything. One daughter worth titles, one daughter worth afterthought. The way she said local paper with just enough emphasis to make it sound small, amateur, not quite serious. I stopped correcting her around 2023. Stopped saying investigative journalist, or mentioning my Hearst Award, or the state senator who resigned because of my reporting. Let her have her narrative. I was building my own. When I won that Hearst Award my senior year of college, a National Journalism Award, top 5 in the country, my mother said, "That's nice, honey. Penelope just got accepted to Johns Hopkins for her cardiothoracic fellowship." As if they were comparable. As if one canceled out the other. As if saving lives and exposing corruption existed on the same scale, and only one direction pointed up. The family photos at my mother's house told the story more clearly than words. Penelope's medical school graduation. Huge, centered, professional frame, matted in burgundy. My college graduation. Small, off to the side, drugstore frame, slightly faded. Same house, same mother. Different measurement systems. I learned young. Save lives. Matter. Tell stories. Don't. Penelope's wedding in 2021 was 200 people at a country club. I brought Wesley. We'd been dating 10 months. At the reception, a family friend asked what he did. Before he could answer, my mother cut in. "He owns a little bakery in Riverside. Very rustic. Community-focused. He gives jobs to people fresh out of prison, which is certainly charitable." The way she said prison made it sound like a disease. The way she said charitable meant naive. Wesley's hand had tightened on his champagne flute, just once, then released. His voice stayed even. "I believe everyone deserves dignity in work. The criminal justice system disagrees. I'm trying to correct that imbalance. One job at a time." My mother smiled, the smile that wasn't a smile, and walked away. Later, in the car, I apologized. Don't, he said. She doesn't know me. That's her loss, not mine. But his jaw stayed tight the whole drive home. He said 7 words the rest of the night. I counted. By Thanksgiving 2024, I'd stopped bringing up my work at family dinners. Penelope would describe successful surgeries. 17 minutes on pump, textbook procedure, patient discharged in 5 days. Everyone would listen, rapt, ask follow-up questions, medical jargon as family language. I mentioned once that my piece on county corruption had led to an FBI investigation, 3 arrests pending. My mother said, "That's nice, dear. Penelope, tell us about the valve replacement you did last week." I told myself it didn't matter. Told myself I'd moved past needing their validation. Professional success was its own reward. Then why was I documenting every slight in a separate notebook? Why was I cataloging every dismissal like evidence in a case file? Why was I treating my own life like an investigation waiting to be published? The notebook sat in my desk drawer, labeled Family Dynamics Research. Dates, quotes, patterns. 5 years of documentation. I'd told myself it was just observation, just a journalist's habit. But I knew better. I was building a case even if I didn't know yet what the case was for. In December 2025, I pitched a series to Anne Brennan, Medical Malpractice Cover-Ups, How Hospitals Protect Revenue and Reputation Over Patient Safety. How insurance companies enable institutional negligence through aggressive NDA enforcement. How legal departments weaponize settlements to silence victims. She looked at me over her coffee. "This is your sister's hospital." "I know," I said. "That's not why I'm investigating. The pattern showed up in the data." She raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it?" I didn't answer because we both knew it was complicated, and we both knew I was going to write it anyway. I pulled public records from 5 local hospitals. St. Augustine had 8 sealed malpractice settlements in 5 years, more than the other 4 combined. All cardiac surgery, all settled between $127,000 and $215,000, all with NDAs. All patients from marginalized populations, incarcerated, uninsured, undocumented, homeless, all complaints dismissed by the medical board. One surgeon's name appeared in 4 of the 8 cases. That wasn't bad luck. That was a problem the hospital knew about and chose to hide. The first file I pulled was from August 2018. Cardiac surgery complication. Patient name redacted in public documents. Hospital settled for $180,000 with an NDA. Surgeon's name redacted in the settlement agreement. But hospital internal memos sometimes get misfiled in FOIA responses. 3 weeks into January 2026, I found it. Subject: Quality Assurance Review. Incident 2018-0823-CARD. Surgeon: Dr. P. Klein Ashford. Patient: Wesley A. Grant, age 28, incarcerated. I sat in my car in the Tribune parking lot. January afternoon, cold seeping through the windows. Laptop screen bright. My boyfriend's name in black and white as a medical malpractice victim. My sister's name as the surgeon. I stared at that screen for 20 minutes. Read the same 2 names over and over. Then I closed the laptop. Drove home. Wesley was making beef stew, listening to NPR, normal Saturday afternoon. I watched him move around our kitchen. Alive. Healthy. Competent. Kind. I should have asked him. But I was afraid. Afraid he'd been hiding it from me. Afraid he'd leave if I knew. Afraid our entire relationship was built on secrets I couldn't see. So I did what I always do when I'm afraid. I kept investigating instead of communicating. The invitation came on February 28th, 2026. Penelope called, rare enough that I almost didn't answer. "I've been promoted," she said. "Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Mom's throwing a celebration dinner. March 8th, The Laurel, 7:30. Private dining room. Can you come? I hesitated. We hadn't seen them since Christmas. We don't have to, I told Wesley that evening. He was rolling out brioche dough, methodical and precise. I know, he said, but maybe it's time. Time for what? I didn't ask. Your grandmother called me yesterday, he added. Asked if we'd be there. Said it was important I attend, that she had something to show people. He looked up then, flower on his cheekbone. I think she knows. The way he said Saint Augustine when Penelope mentioned the promotion. No inflection. Flat. Neutral. I'd heard that tone from interview subjects before, the careful nothing voice that means everything. March 8th arrived too quickly. We drove to the Laurel at 6:45 p.m., March rain starting. I was tense, rehearsing neutrality. Wesley was calm in that too calm way that meant he wasn't calm at all. Your grandmother called me after the White House ceremony, he said, eyes on traffic. She wanted to make sure we'd both be at this dinner. Said she'd been waiting for the right moment, that my receiving the medal changed the timing. I looked at him. Changed how? He was quiet for 3 blocks. I think she's been protecting us, waiting for the moment when the truth would land right. When we'd be strong enough to survive it. There were 3 newspapers on the back seat. All March 3rd editions. All folded to page 14. I'd thought it was pride, saving copies for scrapbooks. Now I wondered. We pulled into the Laurel's parking lot. Wesley turned off the engine but didn't move, hands still on the wheel, knuckles slightly white. Lisa, he said. Stopped. Started again. After tonight, things might be different. Between us. Between you and your family. I need you to know. He stopped. Shook his head. Never mind. Let's go inside. Your grandmother's waiting. The Aspen room. Wood paneling. Fireplace. White linens. 22 people already there when we arrived at 7:35 p.m. late, because Wesley kept delaying. My mother air-kissed my cheek. You made it. We were starting without you. She turned to the woman beside her. Patricia, this is my younger daughter and her. Wesley. He runs a bakery in Riverside. Very community-oriented. The pause before Wesley. No partner, no boyfriend. The way community-oriented meant not profitable. Patricia Chen. My mother's law partner. Sharp woman who didn't suffer fools. Place cards in calligraphy. Penelope and Jonathan at the head, my mother to Penelope's right. Wesley and me at the far end, seats 27 and 28 of 29, near the kitchen door where servers entered. My grandmother, Catherine Walsh, sat beside me, 74 years old, widowed 12 years. She squeezed my hand when I sat down. I'm glad you came, she whispered. Both of you. Something in her purse. I could see the edge of newsprint. You'll want to see this, she said, patting her purse. But not yet. Wait for the moment. You'll know when. She looked at Wesley. He nodded once. They'd planned this. Dinner was served. Conversation flowed around Penelope's achievement. Youngest chief in hospital history. $1.2 million budget increase. Staff expansion from 8 to 12 surgeons. New robotic surgery equipment. Partnership with the University Medical School. I tried to engage. Got polite responses. Then conversation swung back to Penelope like gravity. Someone, a hospital board member, asked Wesley, So you hire criminals? Not unkindly, but not kindly either. Curious in the way people are curious about exotic animals. Wesley didn't blink. I hire people who've served their time and deserve a chance to rebuild their lives. We've helped 38 people stay employed, stay housed, and stay out of the system that failed them the first time. Recidivism rate of 7% compared to the national average of 68%. I'm very proud of that work. 4 seconds of silence. No one knew what to say. Then someone coughed. Someone else asked Penelope about surgical robots. The moment passed, but I saw two people nod slightly. They'd heard him. Really heard him. My mother had been watching from the head of the table. I could see the calculation in her eyes. The baker was being taken seriously. Time to reassert the hierarchy. She stood, tapped her glass with a knife. Sharp crystal sound cutting through conversation. The room quieted. "Before dessert," she said, smiling, "I'd like to make a toast." Wesley's hand found mine under the table. "Here it comes." My mother raised her glass, voice carrying, practiced courtroom projection. Penelope has achieved what most doctors only dream of. At 39, she's leading a department that saves lives daily. She's published in the New England Journal of Medicine. She married a man of equal caliber. She's built a life of meaning, prestige, and impact. She represents everything we hoped for in our children. Penelope smiled. Perfect. Practiced. Jonathan's hand on her shoulder. Then my mother's gaze slid toward our end of the table. "I have 2 daughters," she began. My stomach dropped. One married a cardiothoracic surgeon who saves hearts every day in one of the finest hospitals in the state. The other brought home a baker who smells like flour and works with ex-convicts in a small storefront in Riverside. She paused. Let that breathe. One daughter's work appears in peer-reviewed medical journals that advance human knowledge. The other's work appears in a local newspaper that most people use for lining bird cages. Someone laughed. Then others joined. Permission granted. Not everyone, but enough. I think we all know which path makes a mother proud. I stared at my plate, at the half-eaten duck confit, at the asparagus arranged in careful parallels. I counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. 17 seconds before someone laughed. I counted those too. Wesley's hand in mine. Steady. Warm. Completely still. The journalist in me was already working. Documenting. The rhetorical structure. The audience composition. The careful choice of proud, singular, not plural. The implication that only one daughter deserved the definite article. The daughter in me was dying. Before my mother could continue, my grandmother stood. Calm, deliberate, command presence despite her age. "Before you continue, Diane," she said, voice cutting through the murmurs, "I think you should read page 14 of this morning's Tribune. Actually, I think everyone should read it. Out loud, preferably, since we're making announcements about achievements." She produced the newspaper from her purse, already folded to page 14. The newspaper slid across white linen, newsprint on cloth. The small sound it made. My mother's face. Confusion first. Then irritation at being interrupted. Then, as she picked it up and saw the headline, something else entirely. Color draining. Eyes widening. The champagne glass in her other hand trembling. Her voice faltered. "Local baker Wesley Grant named." She stopped. Started over. "Local baker Wesley Grant named Presidential Citizen's Medal recipient for criminal justice reform work." She looked up. At Wesley, at my grandmother, back at the paper. "This is real?" Her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. My grandmother nodded. Serene. Page 14, Business Section, March 3rd edition, announced January 15th by the White House Office of Presidential Personnel. Ceremony was February 28th. I attended. One of the highest civilian honors in the United States. Wesley didn't tell anyone because he's humble, unlike some people we know. The room went silent. Not polite silence. Shocked recognition silence. Phones came out. Within seconds, confirmation appeared. It was real. Wesley Grant. Presidential Citizens Medal. Criminal Justice Reform. White House Rose Garden Ceremony. Penelope spoke first. Voice careful. "Why didn't you tell us?" This is extraordinary. Presidential medal. Mom, did you know? My mother shook her head mutely. All eyes turned to Wesley. He met Penelope's gaze directly. I saw it then. Finally saw what I'd been missing for 6 years. He knew her. Not as my sister, as something else. I don't require announcement, he said quietly. The work matters, not the recognition. Patricia Chen, Mom's law partner, said, "A Presidential Citizen's Medal. Diane, you didn't mention your daughter's partner was receiving one of the highest civilian honors in the country. That's remarkable." My mother's smile was brittle. I didn't know. Wesley apparently doesn't share his accomplishments. Patricia's look said, "Or you didn't ask." Power was shifting. Physically, people turned chairs, leaned toward our end of the table, status moving through the room like weather. My mother, still standing with her half-finished toast, seemed suddenly smaller. But I was watching Wesley's face. This should have been triumphant. Vindication. The reversal. Instead, he looked sad. Bracing. Like the presidential medal wasn't the revelation he was worried about. It was just the opening act. My grandmother spoke again, voice thick with emotion now. Every Saturday for 2 years, I've watched Wesley teach people how to make bread. Real bread, from scratch. Sourdough, brioche, rye, pumpernickel. But he's teaching more than recipes. He's teaching them they have worth, that they can create something people want, that they can show up at 5 a.m. and be trusted with keys and cash drawers and customer relationships, that their past doesn't define their future, that someone believes in them. Her voice broke slightly on, believes in them. This wasn't networking talk. This was witness testimony. I've watched him save lives, she said, looking directly at Penelope. Maybe not in an operating room, maybe not with scalpels and sutures, but saved, nonetheless. 38 people who might be back in prison are working, living, contributing, raising children, paying taxes, voting. That's surgery of a different kind, don't you think, Penelope? Different tools. Same outcome. Lives saved. Penelope's face went white. Grant's table, she said slowly. Riverside District. That's near the hospital, near St. Augustine. Wesley nodded once. 22 blocks west, straight shot down Riverside Boulevard. The precision. Too specific. Have we met before? Penelope asked. Your name sounds familiar. The question hung. Wesley paused. Just a second. But I felt it like a held breath. Yes, he said finally. We've met before. August 2018, St. Augustine Medical Center. You were my surgeon. The room went completely still. I stopped breathing. August 2018. The same date from the file. The redacted file. The medical malpractice case I'd been investigating for 3 months. My sister's name. Wesley's name. The same case. They'd met before. In an operating room. And something had gone very, very wrong. Someone asked what happened. I don't remember who. Wesley looked at me first. Really looked at me. Grief and love and resignation all mixed together. Before I tell you, he said to me, ignoring everyone else, I need you to know, I love you. I've loved you since October 2020, since you walked into my bakery with your recorder and your questions. Nothing about that love is fake. What I'm about to say doesn't change that, but it changes everything else. He pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. Old creases, worn edges, carried for a long time. He laid it on the table. St. Augustine Medical Center letterhead. Patient, Wesley A. Grant. Date, August 23rd, 2018. Incident report. My grandmother touched my hand. Lisa, sweetheart, there's something Wesley needs to tell you. Something I've known for almost 2 years, but it wasn't my story to share. It's his. Maybe now is the time. Wesley nodded. Started talking. I was 28 years old, First and only conviction: possession with intent to distribute cocaine. I was guilty. Bought 2 ounces thinking I'd sell it, make rent. Stupid decision when my bakery job got cut during the recession. Got 18 months. I was 8 months in when another inmate attacked me, pipe to the chest. I went down, couldn't breathe, thought I was dying. Guards rushed me to St. Augustine. His voice steady. The voice of someone who's told this story to himself 1,000 times but never out loud. They did a scan, found bleeding around my heart, pericardial effusion from blunt trauma. Said I needed emergency cardiac window procedure, maybe full repair depending on what they found. I signed the consent forms. The alternative was bleeding out in county jail. So I consented. He looked at Penelope. And your sister scrubbed in. Penelope's water glass stopped halfway to her mouth. The surgery went well. Wesley continued. That's what they told me when I woke up. Dr. Klein Ashford had performed the repair, stopped the bleeding. Everything looked good. I was in recovery by 3 a.m. 16 hours later, 7 p.m. the next day, I crashed. Couldn't breathe, crushing chest pain. Felt like the pipe was back in my chest. They rushed me to surgery. Different surgeon this time. Dr. Vincent Holder. He found what Dr. Klein Ashford had missed. Someone gasped. I don't know who. Small arterial nick in the pericardium, Wesley said, voice clinical now. Medical jargon like testimony. Too small to see in initial repair, bleeding slowly into pericardial sac over 16 hours. Pressure building until cardiac tamponade, requires immediate drainage and repair. I coded during the second surgery. Resuscitated. Coded again. Resuscitated. Finally stable after 4 hours in OR. He looked at me. Lisa has the documents. She showed me the screenshot when I was looking at her files. Doctor. Holder's operative notes were very clear. Repair of missed arterial injury from prior surgical procedure. Small but significant laceration to pericardial branch. Likely nicked during initial repair. Patient suffered cardiac tamponade secondary to unrecognized bleeding. Emergent drainage and repair performed. He documented it. Professionally, clearly. No ambiguity about what had gone wrong or why. Wesley, I said, my voice barely there. You knew I was investigating? He nodded. I know your passwords, Lisa. I check your research files when you're working late. To see if today's the day you'll find the connection and ask me. You found my case 3 weeks ago, late January. I've been waiting every day since, but you didn't ask. So I'll tell everyone now, and you'll hear it the same time they do. I found my voice. Journalist mode engaging because that was safer than daughter mode. I've been investigating medical malpractice at St. Augustine for 3 months, I said to the room. Pitched it as systemic institutional failure, how hospitals protect revenue over patient safety, how insurance companies enable cover-ups. I pulled records from 5 local hospitals. St. Augustine had 8 sealed malpractice settlements in 5 years. All cardiac surgery, all with NDAs, all patients from marginalized populations. I opened my phone, the photo I'd taken of the memo. The patient's name was redacted in every official document, but the internal hospital memo listed it. Subject: Quality Assurance Review, Incident 2-018-0823-CARD. Surgeon: Dr. P. Klein Ashford, 2nd year attending. Patient: Wesley A. Grant, age 28, incarcerated. My hands shaking when I first read that memo. January afternoon. My boyfriend's name in black and white as a medical malpractice victim. I closed the laptop. I said quietly. Drove home. Wesley was making beef stew. I watched him move around our kitchen and thought, I should ask him, but I didn't. I was afraid he'd been hiding it from me. Afraid our entire relationship was built on secrets. So I did what I always do when I'm afraid. I kept investigating instead of communicating. Wesley's turn again. The risk manager visited me in October 2018. He said, bitter now. Professional woman, nice suit, sympathetic expression. Said there'd been a complication during my surgery. Asked if I'd disclosed my full medical history. I said yes. I had no medical history. First major procedure of my life. She frowned. Said the hospital's position was that I'd failed to mention a prior cardiac condition. I said that was a lie. She said, that's unfortunate. The specific threat coming now. I had a parole hearing scheduled November 15th. She explained very carefully. Hospital could testify about my behavior during recovery. Could describe me as non-compliant, argumentative, difficult, a risk to staff, or they could stay neutral. Your choice, Mr. Grant. Settle now, we stay silent. Refuse to settle, we testify to protect our staff. Wesley's jaw tight. I refused. I was 28, terrified, but I refused. I wanted them held accountable, so they followed through. November 15th, 2018. My parole hearing. Hospital representative testified I'd been a difficult patient, non-compliant with post-surgical instructions, verbally aggressive toward nursing staff. All lies. All documented in a report they'd fabricated. Parole denied. 17 people listening, silent, horrified. After parole was denied, the risk manager came back. December 2018, same suit, same sympathetic expression. This time, the offer was different. $180,000 in exchange for signing an NDA and agreeing not to pursue malpractice claims. She was very clear. This was a generous offer. If I refused, they'd make sure my remaining 14 months were difficult. I'd be 30 before I got out, maybe older. The settlement signing. January 14th, 2019. Jail conference room. Wesley's hand shaking. I got out July 2020. The $180,000 was still there. I used it to lease the Riverside location, buy commercial ovens and mixers, hire my first 2 employees. Started Grant's Table August 2020. 2 months later, a journalist came to interview me about pandemic small business adaptation. Her name was Lisa Klein. He looked at me. I thought it was coincidence. Then you mentioned your sister was a surgeon. Then you said St. Augustine, cardiothoracic, and I knew exactly who your sister was. The room was a tomb. I could have told you, Wesley said to me. Should have. On date 3 when I realized you were Penelope's sister. On our first anniversary when you were already part of my life in ways I couldn't imagine losing. But I loved you. And you were so separate from your family. Barely talked to them. Built your own career. Your own values. I thought maybe the past didn't matter. Maybe we could build something outside that history. He reached for my hand, hesitant now. I'm sorry. I should have told you. But every day I waited, it got harder. How do you tell someone you love that their sister nearly killed you? That their family's hospital destroyed 2 years of your life? I didn't have words for that. So I stayed quiet and hoped you'd never have to know. Across the table, Penelope spoke, voice shaking. I remember you. I remember that case. The incarcerated patient with pericardial trauma. But it wasn't my fault. Your history was incomplete. Trauma was severe. Complications happen in emergency surgery. Wesley cut her off, voice harder than I'd ever heard it. My history was complete. I had no prior cardiac conditions. Dr. Holder found the arterial nick you missed. He documented it in his operative report. You made an error. The hospital made you write an incident report acknowledging the error. Then they buried both reports and paid me to disappear. You went on to become chief of cardiothoracic surgery. I went to prison for 14 more months. Don't tell me it wasn't your fault. Penelope tried again. I was 31 years old, second year attending. Emergency cardiac repair on a trauma patient. With complete medical history, Wesley interrupted. 28 years old, first surgery of my life. You made an error. Dr. Holder found it immediately. It's in his operative report. The hospital's quality assurance review confirmed it. That's why they paid $180,000. That's why they testified at my parole hearing when I refused to settle quietly. That's why you're still working there, and I spent 14 extra months in prison. I have the documents, I said, pulling out my phone. Dr. Holder's operative notes, Penelope's incident report, the QA review, the settlement terms, the parole hearing transcript, all of it. I've been building this case for 3 months. My mother's voice cut through. Sharp. Controlled. Lawyer mode. This is absurd. You pursued my daughter, dated her for 6 years, all while harboring a grudge against her sister? That's calculated. That's revenge, masquerading as romance. Wesley's voice stayed level. I fell in love with your daughter despite her sister. Not because of her. Lisa is nothing like Penelope. That's why I love her. And even if the NDA were valid, I said, I'm publishing this story regardless. I'm a journalist investigating medical malpractice. Wesley's case is one of 8 I've documented. Hospital cover-ups, institutional protection of negligent surgeons, abuse of settlement agreements to silence victims. All public interest, all publishable. Patricia Chen stood up, set her napkin on the table. Diane, I think we should go. This is a family matter, and if there's potential litigation involving medical malpractice and NDAs, I don't want to be a witness. Conflict of interest. She looked at me. Lisa, if you publish, make sure your fact-checking is bulletproof. This will get ugly. 3 other law colleagues left with her. 5 more guests followed within minutes. The Aspen room that had held 29 now held 17. Those who stayed, grandmother, 2 of Wesley's Second Chances employees who'd been invited as guests, a hospital social worker, my editor Anne Brennan who'd shown up late, 2 cousins who'd always been kind to me, and a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Holder's daughter, the ones willing to witness truth. My mother sat frozen at the head of the table, Penelope crying quietly. I stood up. I'm going to publish the story, I said, to everyone remaining. I'm going to write about what happened to Wesley, about the pattern at St. Augustine. 8 cases, 3 surgeons, systematic institutional protection. I'm going to name names, cite documents, include Wesley's story with his permission, and I'm going to publish it in the Tribune this week. My mother stood, face pale but voice strong. If you do that, you're choosing him over your family, over your sister, over everything we've built. No, I interrupted. I'm choosing truth over performance. There's a difference. You built your pride on Penelope's success. Fine. But her success was built on buried mistakes and silenced victims. That's not achievement. That's scaffolding. And I'm a journalist. I don't protect scaffolding. I expose it. Penelope hadn't moved, hands pressed flat on white tablecloth. Finally, she looked up, met my eyes. If you publish that story, I'll lose everything. My career, my reputation, maybe my license. Everything I've built for 15 years, gone. I held her gaze. I know, and you should have lost it 8 years ago. 3 days later, March 11th, 2026, 6 a.m., I hit publish. The article went live on the Tribune's website. 3,200 words. Title: When Success Hides Failure, a personal story of medical malpractice, institutional cover-up, and the cost of silence. My lead paragraph: I didn't know my partner nearly died because of my sister's surgical error until 3 weeks ago. I didn't know the hospital where she's now chief of cardiothoracic surgery had buried the evidence until I started investigating medical malpractice patterns. I didn't know my family's pride was built on someone else's silence until that silence broke at a dinner meant to celebrate achievement. This is what happened when I chose journalism over family, and why I'd make that choice again. The original investigation was 2,400 words. Pattern analysis, 8 cases, 3 surgeons, systematic protection. Wesley's story, added after the dinner with his permission, was 800 words more. Opening narrative. The human face of institutional failure. By 9 a.m., 50,000 views. By noon, 200,000. At 1 p.m., the Washington Post called. Headline: Journalist exposes sister's medical malpractice and hospital's pattern of covering up errors. NPR at 3 p.m., CNN at 4 p.m. By evening, trending on social media, hashtag Grant Story, hashtag medical accountability, hashtag second chances. The comments section filled fast. Support: This took incredible courage. Criticism: You betrayed your own sister for clicks. And most powerfully, other victims. This happened to me too. I signed an NDA too. I thought I was the only one. 7 more stories in the first 48 hours. The pattern undeniable. March 11th, 11 a.m. Hospital statement. We are reviewing all matters raised in Ms. Klein's article and take patient safety with utmost seriousness. We have retained independent counsel to investigate. Translation: They were terrified. March 12th, 10 a.m. Email from hospital CEO to Penelope. Effective immediately, you are placed on paid administrative leave pending internal review. My mother called at 10:15. Are you satisfied now? You've destroyed your sister's career. She destroyed it herself, I said. I just documented it. She hung up. The cascade was inexorable. March 13th, medical board inquiry. March 14th, 2 more victims coming forward. March 16th, insurance company's lawyer in panic. March 18th, Penelope's suspension became unpaid. March 20th, chief title removed from website. Anne Brennan called March 13th. The story's been picked up nationally, every major outlet. The hospital's lawyer threatened a lawsuit. Our lawyer laughed. Everything you wrote is documented. You're going to win awards for this, Lisa. But are you okay? Really okay? I looked around my apartment. Wesley had moved out the day after the dinner, needing space to process. Ask me in 6 months, I said. The conversation metastasized beyond the article. TikTok videos analyzing family dynamics, Twitter threads about medical board failures, Reddit discussions about NDA abuse. The presidential medal connection made it irresistible. Man nearly killed by surgeon's error becomes presidential medal recipient, wrote its own headlines. March 14th, an envelope arrived. No return address. Postmarked Washington, D.C. Inside, note on White House letterhead. Ms. Klein, your article has reached the White House. The President stands by the February 28th decision to honor Mr. Grant. His story exemplifies the resilience and commitment to service we sought to recognize. We hope you will both continue this important work. Office of Presidential Personnel. They'd read it. They supported it. The highest office in the country had just validated my choice. Wesley called March 20th. First time we'd spoken since he'd moved out. Lisa, we've received $350,000 in donations in 10 days. People from all over the country. Enough to open the second location and start planning a third. Your story, it did something. Not just for me. For everyone who comes through our doors. Silence on the line. I'm ready to come home, he said. Day 16 of separation. If you'll have me, if there's still an us after everything. There's always been an us, I said, even when we were keeping secrets, especially now. April brought consequences. Hospital launched independent review, medical board formal investigation. 2 board members resigned over dismissed complaints. Insurance company facing potential class action. Penelope's license. Suspended April 8th, pending review. Hearing scheduled July 15th. Chief position permanently removed. Career effectively over. 3 other hospitals in the state launched similar reviews. Medical accountability becoming actual conversation. One article. 8 years of buried truth. Systems starting to shift. Grants table became case study. Organizations asking for consultations. White House planning to feature second chances in President's May criminal justice reform speech. The Tribune offered me senior investigative reporter. I declined. Preferred fieldwork. Washington Post offered $95,000. ProPublica $88,000. NPR wanted me for investigative unit. Anne asked what I wanted. I want to keep telling stories that matter. Here, where I know the community, where impact is local and measurable. She smiled. Counteroffer. Senior investigative reporter, $72,000. Full autonomy on story selection. I said yes. The next series was already planned. Juvenile justice system. Different context, same principle. Power protecting itself at cost of powerless. But I was also writing something else. Personal essay about family, favoritism, journalism, the cost of choosing truth. Not for publication, for processing. May 2026 arrived quietly. Wesley and I sat on our apartment balcony one evening. Riverside sunset. The bakery visible from here. The White House ceremony feels like a different lifetime, he said. February 28th. I stood in the Rose Garden, shook the president's hand, received the medal. Grandmother was crying. I was thinking about the dinner 10 days later, about whether we'd survive the truth finally coming out. The medal sat on our bookshelf now, beside my Hearst Award plaque. 2 validations of 2 different kinds of work. I'm not glad your sister hurt me, Wesley continued. I'm not glad I went to prison. But I'm glad I built something from that pain, and I'm glad you exposed it. Those can both be true. Grandmother called weekly, reported. Your mother asks about you, doesn't apologize, doesn't admit fault. Just asks how you are. I tell her you're thriving. Am I? I asked. She laughed. More than she is. Diane Klein had lost her law partnership, conflict issues, clients not wanting association. She was, of counsel now, diminished. Penelope was home all day, not working, waiting for July hearing. Marriage strained. A letter arrived in April, from Penelope, forwarded by grandmother. I left it unopened on my desk for 3 weeks. Finally read it in May. I don't know how to apologize for something I don't fully accept I did wrong. The surgery was complicated. The error was small. The outcome was survival. But I'm trying to understand your perspective. Maybe someday we can talk. P. I haven't responded. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Wesley and I moved to a larger apartment in April, near the bakery. Sunday mornings he makes French toast while I work on investigation notes. Do you regret it? He asked one Sunday. May sunshine through the kitchen window. Publishing the story? Losing your family? I thought. Really thought. I regret what I lost. But I don't regret choosing truth. Those are different regrets. One is about grief. The other would be about compromise. I can live with grief. I couldn't live with compromise. The kitchen smells like bread and coffee. NPR playing softly. The life we built without performance or pretense. Real, imperfect, honest. My notebook, the one labeled Family Dynamics Research, sits in a box now. Archived, labeled Grant Story, background notes. The story has been told, the documentation complete. They'd wanted me to be the quiet one, the lesser daughter, the one who married less impressively, achieved less visibly, mattered less obviously. the one who accommodated, who smiled through dismissals, who accepted her place without complaint. Instead, I became the one who refused silence when silence protected wrong people. I became a journalist who chose truth over comfort, accuracy over approval, public accountability over private peace. I became a partner to someone who turned prison time into presidential recognition, surgical negligence into systematic reform, trauma into purpose. I became estranged from a family that valued performance over honesty, prestige over character, hierarchy over love. Some daughters marry surgeons and measure success in institutional validation. Some daughters bring home bakers and build lives of quiet dignity, and some daughters become witnesses, choosing to document, to expose, to honor truth even when truth costs them everything they thought they needed. I chose the third path. They called it betrayal. I called it journalism. I called it integrity. I called it refusing to be complicit in cruelty just because cruelty wore a nice suit and used professional language and came from people who shared my last name. Sitting here in May 2026, relationship rebuilt, career flourishing, family estranged but conscience clear, I understand something I'd been too afraid to accept before. Not all family is family. Not all success is successful. And not all silence is peace. The only success that mattered, the only measure I'd answer to when I looked back on this moment, was whether I'd honored truth when truth cost me. And I had. And I would again. That was enough.